Hello, thank you for joining me for Samuel in Springtime. Today is Tuesday, May 25th, and we will be looking at the 25th chapter of the first book of Samuel. In the very beginning of this chapter, Samuel dies and is buried at Ramoth. And that's the end of that. It's only the first book of Samuel, but he's dead by the 25th chapter. Now, we have to identify where he's buried because this isn't the last we've seen of him. Oh, so that's interesting, right? What's most interesting, though, about chapter 25 is chapter 25 contains the story of Abigail. Yes, and if you love this story and you are interested to learn more and talk more about who Abigail was and what she did, I would encourage you. You got this email. Below is Women of the Bible. One of the weeks and one of the chapters is about this First Samuel story about Abigail, the wife of King David. But before she's King David's wife, she is the wife of Nabal, the fool. He is indignant and surly and ornery, and he is rich. And David hears that he is shearing his sheep, knows that it is a feast day, that it is time to celebrate, and lets Nabal know that he and his men are nearby in the wilderness and would like to come and sup at his table. So, the idea being that, hey, I'm David, the warrior. I've been looking out for you. I have been keeping you safe. I am the hedge of protection around your family and your property. I am coming to celebrate with you. And most people would just pull out all the stops and welcome him in. But not Nabal. Remember? He's ornery. He's surly. He's a fool. And he says, okay, this is what Nabal said. Here it is. Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants today who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and the meat that I have butchered from my shears and give it to men who come from I do not know where? So Nabal, with his rhetoric and his caustic language, rejects David and his men for the feasting. And what happens next is that Abigail, Nabal's wife, discovers this mistake. And it is a mistake. It is not an accident, but it is a mistake. Nabal's mistaken in his idea of how he's going to go forward in doing this and rejecting David's offer to come and be at his table. So Abigail hurries up. And it's all listed here. She lines up all these gifts to give to King David and his men. And she sets them all on donkeys, sends them out ahead of her. It's wine, it's bread, it's meats that are prepared, and raisins and cakes and all kinds of good things. Sends it all out ahead of her. And then she humbly begs the forgiveness of David and explains that it's not good that David should come in and take up the sword, because that's what he had planned to do. I kind of probably left that part out, didn't I? When the men came back and told David what Nabal had said, David said, well, let's go get him. Let's go take him out. Boom. So, they get ready to draw their sword against Nabal. And Abigail, intervenes. And when she intervenes, David thanks her not only for the gift, but because he essentially is a righteous man. Although he can go astray, he can always be brought back. And we'll see this happen again. It's not the first time that somebody has come to David and beseeched him to change his mind about something and saved him from doing something he would regret later. And so what happens is David says to Abigail, after she explains that you don't want to have this blood guilt, is the word that's used in my Bible, blood guilt against you. David says to Abigail, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your good sense, and blessed be you who have kept me from blood guilt and from avenging myself by my own hand. For as surely as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried to come to meet me, truly by morning, there would not have been left to Nabal so much as one male. David received the gifts from her hand, and when she returned home, Nabal was feasting, and he was very much in his cups. Then the next morning, she shared with her husband what all she had done, because she did this all in secret. And then after the feasting was over, and after she'd given all this stuff to David, reconciled with him, she shared with her husband what happened. And he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. And the moral to this story is, if you act like a dirty old nasty curmudgeon, you will turn to a stone and die. Really, that's probably not what always happens, but I guess the message there is clear. And to me, it seems like, oh, he died because he was such a nasty guy and he did this to David. But if you turn it on the other side and look from a different perspective, let's think about David. David's hand was stayed from Nabal dying at the point of David's blade. And instead, God took care of that business for him so that he would not have the blood guilt on his own head. And see, if you go back to what David says specifically to Abigail, he says, from avenging myself by my own hand. It ends up being God's hand that ends up killing Nabal, and everything is okay. David's okay. Abigail's okay because now that she's a widow, she's available. And David doesn't leave her there to be a poor widow, because widows and orphans and people, they didn't have anybody to take care of them back then. He takes her in as his wife, and she accepts he woos her. It says in the scripture that he woos her to get her to be his wife, and she becomes his wife, and they all live happily ever after with the other wife named Ahinoam, who doesn't have a story that goes along with her. She's from Jezreel. God bless her. But Abigail has a story, and she's very exciting. Now, it's mentioned here about David's wives. He has the two wives, Abigail and Ahinoam. And he also, remember Michal, but their marriage was annulled by Saul so that David wouldn't have a claim to the throne through his marriage to Michal. So that was an annulment that Saul enacted, and that's who David has the two wives. Keep track, because it'll change. So just make sure you recognize David is taking Abigail as his wife, but he also has taken on Ahinoam of Jezreel as well. So as you go throughout your day, I want you to carry the words of Abigail and David with you, because this is another expression of faithful devotion between people. Abigail was truly concerned about David's blood guilt and about her household and all the people that she ended up saving by bringing this gift to David. And she ended up saving David too from doing something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. So I think there's a beauty in all of this story, and that God's hand was in it. But don't be like Nabal. Have a good one.